Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Jay-Z and I are here to talk about teleology again. We're working on a teleology series. We're reading a book called Teleology, A History, and we're going through that book and discussing that. Anything you have on your mind already, Jay-Z?
No, mm-mm.
Okay.
I'm wiped clean.
All right, let's go with the slide presentation. So this is on teleology, Hellenistic astrology's missing philosophy. Okay, so let's look at this concept. Concept one: some things exist or happen for the sake of other things. Example: cats lie in the sun to warm themselves. Or a cat's claws are for protection, grabbing things, and for scratching itches. A cat's tail is for communication and balance. Okay. So, what is this that some things exist for other things? You remember this is back to our Course in Miracles. What is this thing for? We don't know what this is for.
Well, it also seems like things aren't for one thing, you know?
Okay.
Like, so there's like, how do you know if something's like a primary reason, a secondary reason, a reason for the thing's existence? Is there ever a single reason for something's existence?
Yeah, interesting. That's a really, really good point. I mean, teleology is philosophy, right? Like, so if we think of it factually, like scientifically, a cat's claws are for scratching. Well, actually, it's not scientifically. That's one idea of what the cat's claws are for. There's might be 1,000 things they're used for. Like maybe the cat uses it to get something off its tail, or maybe it uses it to scratch its own arm because it's just stimming. Like we don't know it. Like, is there one ubiquitous thing that cat's claws are for? Like, no. Um, what is an apple for?
Well, it can be, it depends who you are in relation to the apple, right? So if you're a human, you could think that the apple is for eating. If you're a worm, you could think it's a house, you
Ah,
know?
interesting. So what we are for, what something is for, depends on who's referring to it, who's utilizing it.
Oh, is this going to get to the extrinsic versus intrinsic value?
Yes.
Because for an apple, like the apple has no concept of the human or the worm. And it's for itself to reproduce, to like fall on the ground and then have its seeds perpetuate its species by creating more apple trees.
Interesting. In Soulmate, they say that a creature's only job is to get bigger. And, like what it's for is, yeah, I mean, but then in Soulmate also says that everything incarnates for a reason. Every person, every human, everything incarnates for a reason. So I
Well,
think,
a certain apple is like grows because it's the one that's gonna fall down and not get picked, but be able to perpetuate its species. It's gonna fall down and rot on the ground.
yeah, and maybe one apple grows to be the king's apple tree apple. Like maybe you are the king's apple and that's your chart, which, you know, that apple would have a different chart than another apple. Um,
Hmm.
you know. So, yeah, I mean, I think okay, so meaning is very important. Actually, why is teleology a healing philosophy? Well, it ascribes meaning to things. It doesn't just let the apple grow in size and then everyone just ignores the apple like, we're like, oh, there's an apple. What can I use this for? I'm going to use it in my pie. This apple was grown for my pie. But all of a sudden, this apple has a meaning and a purpose. So let me ask you, what is good about having a meaning or a purpose?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you as well, because in our last maybe episode, you were asking what I thought my life purpose was, and I was like, ah, to, like have a great life and be chill, and you're like, no, no, that's not enough.
Well, Well, in the Course in Miracles, she kind of says that meaning is everything, that without meaning, like if we take this nail polish and we just look at it in a meaningless fashion, let's just look at it meaninglessly. Oh my God, nothing's occurring. Like that, like is meaning everything? You're like, "Oh my God, that was the nail polish I wore when I made that one our first video, Jay-Z." Like or like whatever, like we can like ascribe all this like sentimental meaning to this and then all of a sudden it's a magical miraculous thing.
Yeah, right. But if you saw that in a thrift store in like a 25-cent box, you wouldn't buy it, you know?
Well,
Well, maybe you would.
if you all of a sudden ascribe meaning to it of like that's the color I've been looking for all this time. This is so meaningful to me. It was so magical that I found it in that thrift store for 25 cents. That was so magical. All of a
Yeah.
sudden that is the best nail polish that ever lived.
Hmm.
Right.
It's true.
So there's something to be said for ascribing meaning to things and charts, right? Like because it makes them somehow more magical. So we could say some charts exist for the sake of things, or all charts exist for the sake of things. So like we could say perhaps Pisces are made to clear the emotions of all humans, you know, or maybe Gemini is made for talking and bringing fresh air. Like somehow that makes the signs more magical by giving them a purpose.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure. That's true.
Okay.
I'm with you.
So, do you think teleology is the philosophy that ascribes meaning to astrology? Like, you can do astrology without a teleological lens, right?
Yeah, it's a little nihilistic, do you think?
Well, we could just say Geminis are talkative and just leave it at that.
Oh, right. Right, right. But like what's the what's well, when we're talking about purpose, I guess it's kind of like benefits. But I guess the pros and cons, right? And then because I think it's like people need to pattern match and categorize things. Like why do we even have astrology? What's the purpose of astrology itself?
Oh, snap. Okay, so we could say it provides a non-judgmental lens for human difference. That's one. You're right. That's benefits. In some ways, it's like, what are the benefits of this chart? Like, what is this chart for? What are the benefits of this? If used, how could this chart be used beneficially? You know? Um, okay, interesting.
Hmm.
Anything else about this slide? Like, you could write an article which is like the function and purpose of each sign. And what are the benefits of each sign? And I feel that would be a teleological look into the signs.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. I agree. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so in this slide I say in astrology, a natal Venus square Jupiter is for a natural party vibe. But you're right, that's like the benefits of a Venus square Jupiter is it's a total party vibe. We could also look at the negatives of it, like, oh, it's too much of a party vibe, like, too much drinking, too much sugar, whatever.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the old school thing of like, don't let anybody see your chart because then it can be used against you to manipulate you. So I guess it could also, with the cons side is it's like um a predilection for something that someone could use nefariously.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. Okay, a Sun conjunct Mars is for contending and pressing forward. Okay. I do think this is healing, don't you? Because don't you think a Sun conjunct Mars person could get a bad rap?
Oh, for being too in your face and aggressive.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well,
It's
and I
true.
think there's something. It's not just what are the benefits, but it's like what, because if we know what a chart is for, we can start helping it grow heartily. Like so, we say, oh, a Sun conjunct Mars is good for contending and pressing forward. Can we get this kid in a competitive environment, like sports, right?
Hmm.
So because this is good for contending. It's not good for, being a peacemaker. I mean, maybe if it was a Libra, it could be a contentious peacemaker. I don't know. But I'm saying that like it's not for, I guess we could say some things are not definitely not for, oh, okay, like okay, a cat's claws, what are they not for? What are they definitely not for? I can't set my coffee on a cat's claws.
You can't what?
Set my coffee on a cat's claw.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's best use and yeah, not misuse, but like yeah, not matched up use. So yeah, it's a Sun conjunct Mars is a contender.
Like I'm gonna drink
No?
this nail polish, Jay-Z. I'm gonna drink it.
Yeah, that's not what it's for, honey.
Okay, interesting. We just learned something. Like when we look at what it is for, it might be for 10 things, but it's definitely not for a bunch of things. Like I'm not going to put it over my computer camera either. It's not for
Right,
that.
because yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's true. It's like don't feel it for when you come to explaining something to a person, it's like, well, don't get down on yourself for trying to misuse your uh tendencies or like you know, yeah, use them for what your strengths are.
Let's put a
When
sun. Oh, go ahead.
when I was in this one corporation, they really were into this book that's called Now Discover Your Strengths. And I think there's like a 2.0 version of it now called Strengths Finder 2.0 or something like 20 years later. Uh, but what it is basically this management philosophy was like, if you like, people are good at certain things, right? And some people are better than other people at certain things. And at your on your job, right? Like things are better when they're team based, when you have a team of people doing things rather than individuals, because people have different strengths and weaknesses, and then you can cover for each other. So like the thing is, if you're a manager and you have a whole bunch of people reporting to you, maybe you have somebody that's like introverted and shy and like is not really good at explaining things. Well, like just don't have them do the presentations rather than on their performance review every single year say, well, you're really bad at doing presentations, so you should, get better at that. It's like, why can't you just let them do more of the things that they're good at? Because if you have like this much room for improvement and you can like you love doing that and you can get like that much better at that thing at like sitting and organizing if you're a sitting and organizing person versus a giving presentations person. But if you wanted them to give presentations better, they'd get like this much better and hate it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so you just go with your strengths and don't focus on your weaknesses. And I think that's what we're saying here. Sorry,
Interesting.
that was so
So
long-winded.
a good example of this would be Gordon Ramsay, the chef from Hell's Kitchen
Mhm.
and Kitchen Nightmares. So he's a super Scorpio. He's a Sun, Venus, Neptune, and Scorpio. Sextile Mars, Moon, and Pluto in Virgo. Scorpio, super Virgo. Okay. So he's like
Mhm.
intensely critical. He's got Mars in Virgo, right? Intensely critical. And it's like let's say you put him in a preschool classroom and and the kids are trying to learn their ABCs and he's like, "You suck." Like if he was just being himself, right? Like, "Oh, you're terrible. You're or whatever." And we're just like, "Oh my God, this person's so toxic and like, oh, this is pathological." And he's like, "What? I'm just being myself." Okay. Well, he's not made for children. Like, or what, like he's not made for preschool, right? But if we put him
Yeah.
in Hell's Kitchen, hell, that's like a Scorpio, you know, like Virgo is like that is hell, right? Like you're in
Hmm.
Hell's Kitchen, it's like, oh, that's what you're for. You're for making the best chefs that ever wanted to live. Like you're like you make the best of the you're an excellence bringer to, you know, these chefs or whatever. So you see how this is a very pathological looking personality if it's not in the right role. But if you put him in the right role, like he goes in and cleans up businesses, like he goes into these worst business cases of these restaurants and cleans them up, right? It's like I think one of the biggest healing things about teleological astrology is we get people into the right activities and not the wrong activities, or the wrong or the right context and not the wrong contexts, you know.
I like that. I like that. And I think it goes along too with like, you know how people are always asking kids like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, it really is a legit thing. I always thought it was like kind of dumb and annoying, but it is legit. Like, really, we should be asking the kids, like, what do they like? What do they want to do? What, is exciting to them? And it's probably, yeah, like as they get to know themselves better, they they have less of the like generic answer and more of the like, oh, I really want to do this thing. If they're allowed, I guess, to if they're really legit asked,
Yeah,
What do
and
you
I
think?
think this even goes to another level with that is like, what are you here for, sweetie? Like, what did the creator create you for? You know, because it's like it's not just like what do you want to do, and which makes them think there's like firefighter, nurse, doctor, librarian. A lot of times what we see with a chart is the person's actually made for some special task that doesn't even exist yet. Like Gordon Ramsay, there's no job description when you're five of like, I want to be the most critical chef that ever lived. You know what I mean? It's like what, but he had to invent what he was here for because God's created in him like the most unique savage temperament that you can even imagine. But it's like we need savagery, you know, in excellence context, I guess. But so you know, have you ever met entrepreneurs are a really good example of what are you here for. It's like when they build the business around their chart and what it's made to do. You know, they say
Hmm.
that if you do that, it's called melatao. If you train your it's a Greek word that means if you train your body for what it was meant for, you will
Hmm.
be busy and zealous, is what they say. So it's like now that he's turning businesses around, he's like super busy and famous. But I bet he was, you know, when in the wrong context, like working under some other boss, like Gordon Ramsay kept getting fired, I bet, you know, for being rude, you know. So I think this is actually like it's like what is your dream, or can you like with the kids we could say, do you get any visions about what you're here to do, what are you here for, you know, because they would say that we are supposed to get visions called down to show us what we're here for.
Interesting. Interesting.
Okay, a natal moon square Neptune is for psychic abilities. What is it not for? I like that question.
Oh, let's see. I'd say some kind of like realism, factual, fact correcting.
Totally, it's not here for for energetic boundaries.
It's not, yeah, it's not here for meticulously fact correcting.
Okay, well, I think, you know, okay, I think we're really getting somewhere that there are things a certain aspect of your personality are good for, and certain things it's definitely not good for. And so I think we want to funnel clients and friends who, when we're looking at their chart, into activities that are good for their chart and their chart can do well. Okay. Also, on a transit to Saturn and Capricorn, a kid is building with Legos. This is preparation for her natal telos of being a carpenter later in life. See how I used her there? That was kind of subversive, wasn't
Oh yeah, totally.
it? Okay, no, but okay, so this is or on a transit to a
Because
kid's
everybody knows girls can't be carpenters.
or on a transit to a kid's natal moon square Neptune, she sees a ghost. This is for her telos of being a psychic. Okay, so this is actually, this slide is speaking to the idea that when little kids transit, they're actually preparing for their adult task, right? So like, let's say the kid's having a transit to the Saturn and Capricorn and they're young and we see them building with Legos. We might just think, oh, that kid's playing with Legos. Look at them playing. And a teleologist might say like, oh my God, a builder. Look at, that's a builder. This chart's for building, right? So there's something to be said for like watching a chart in transit and then trying to help that show you what it's for. Or
That
like,
sounds difficult. It sounds like how it might be tough. Like don't kids do a lot of things all the time? How do you know when to identify it's like a transit that's signifying their telos and when it's a transit that's just a natural energy is being expressed? Or are they the same thing?
well, as a teleological astrologer, you would be watching your kid on every single transit to their natal chords and knowing that they're building on themselves every transit, one transit at a time. So the same natal chord gets hit by transit over and over again. It's like building. Now we're building again. Oh my God, look, they're building again. Oh my God, it's a carpenter that's growing. So a really good astrologer, watches the clock constantly. Um, some people think you should avoid looking at the transits too much as to not be obsessed with astrology. And a teleological astrologer is constantly like, what time is it? Oh my gosh, it's time for them to build a tiny bead necklace again. Oh my God, it's that same aspect of the personality. Oh my God, there it goes again. So maybe we see the psychic, the moon square Neptune kid sees a ghost on a transit to the moon square Neptune, and we're like, oh my God, they saw a ghost. And then another transit to the moon square Neptune, they're talking to their spirit guide, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is a psychic. Oh my gosh. You know, and people think that astrological parents just look at their kid and say like, "Oh, your chart's doing this, that's you." Like, but a really good astrologer parent is watching and wondering like, "Oh my God." Like I'm constantly amazed by my daughter's chart, you know, as it unfolds, but the same aspects of personality do the same similar behaviors. Like,
Hmm,
so we see repeated uh data.
I see. Right on.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's have a discussion moment. Can you tell us what one of your natal aspects is for? Can we talk
Hmm.
about your Mercury Pluto Uranus opposition?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what do you think that thing is good for?
All
So
right. So
It's Mercury in Pisces, everyone, opposed a Pluto Uranus conjunction in Virgo.
mm, I'd say, well, so the Mercury in Pisces, I'd say that's kind of like a more poetic way of expressing communication. And then opposite a Pluto Uranus conjunction. I don't know, what would you say about that?
Well, what I've noticed repeatedly on transits to your chart, because I've been watching your chart for 20 years, and I didn't make this up. This is me speaking data back to you. What you do on transits to this, because Saturn's going over it right now, and you study philosophy, like you're like very philosophical with the Mercury and Pisces, like you're looking at a global expansive view of things, like it's like the emotional state of all humans at once, kind of, like we're studying the Course in Miracles, which is like an expansive thought form, right? So you'll study a lot of these expansive thought forms, or it might be even computer theory or something. It's like theoretical visual, right? And then when you go over that Virgo stuff, it'll get really technical about it, you know. So it'll be like, well, what about this, or what about this, or what about that? Kind of what we're doing this in these teleology series is like we're like looking at the tiny minutia of this philosophy of teleology. And I've also seen you do marriages between like medical science and philosophical science. Like, so when we look at bodies, like weight loss considerations philosophically, like when we're looking at astrophysiognomy and how people look according to their chart, like you'll hold space for like the philosophy of astrology to say each body looks exactly as it should to its chart. And then you say, and then medical technology would say that thin bodies are more you know, less prone to XYZ. Like, so you'll always take like the medical, like linear Virgo approach, and then you marry it with like the philosophical, and you like do both at the same time, is what I've noticed.
Oh, right. I see. Interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
And though I think it could be for computer, like computer programming too. Like I feel like you're like, I remember when you were doing some computer programming, you had all these post-it notes all over doing conceptual visual mapping of like user interface, and then you go in and code the stuff so that user interface, you know, it's like I feel like it's emotional user experience with technical coding. So I think it's good for a lot of things.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely think the Uranus opposed the Mercury also is like things I like it takes me a while to catch on to something, but then once I've got it, I've got it. Like I don't know if that is revealed in my chart configuration in that either, but I think that's actually true.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I think Pisces has to like grapple with the whole concept of a thing. It's a very global mind, right? Like, so it's like looking at things from this like pictorial sense, and it has to get the whole picture in order to understand something, right? So like, what is it not good for? Like, it's not good for like chit-chatting about minutia, like not minutia, but like things that are not super. I don't know,
Important.
like. Yeah, well,
It's
I mean,
not for small talk.
exactly. Like you're not like, what did you eat for dinner? And you know, like you know, what are you wearing to the party tomorrow? And not that we can't talk about those things, but you would be putting those things in this kind of global view of like the day, and like like yeah, I mean, it's it's not good for like stand-up comedy maybe.
Oh yeah, no, that's confusing. It's actually good for being factually accurate too. It's confusing to me when things are opposite the truth or like, somebody says something that's not true or whatever. That's very confusing.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think that's a good this is a good place to take a pause and let people think for a week. But we need a note. Do you have somewhere you can put a note for us that we're on slide 7?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for this. I love your Mercury. I love what it's for.
Oh, thanks.
It's on my moon in Pisces, so it's like your Mercury's
Well,
on my moon. So we're like for each other, you know?
yeah, that's I was gonna say that too. It's true. We've got that's hmm. What is our what is our Mercury moon conjunction for?
I think it's for fleshing out this a lot of concepts, spiritual and philosophical concepts. That's one thing it's good for. But
Yeah.
it's for a lot of things. So,
It's good for feeling in step with each other and that we have the same understanding and vibe. Yeah.
totally. It's good for making music together.
Oh, that's true too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
All right, well, I love you. I'm gonna turn this off and render it so we can meet up at the Ensoulment study group, which your Mercury is definitely good for.
All right. I'll see you at Ensoulment. I'll see everybody else at the next thing.
All right, bye, Jesse.
Bye.